Everyone, welcome back for 2016, and I hope everyone had a happy new year. This is the Education Committee meeting, and we're in the Upper Dublin Cardinal Room. I don't think we have any. Do we have any announcements? Anyone? Dr. Wheeler?
We do not.
Minutes? It's not on. All right, the November 30th minutes have been distributed to everybody, and Ms. Evans would like us to give her any corrections if there are any. Okay. Okay, first up on our agenda is we would like to recognize a member of the community member for a very generous gift.
Mr. Berenbaum, if you would just come up and stand next to me. I'd like to introduce Mr. Berenbaum. He is an alumni of Upper Dublin High School and lives in our community. I met him about a year ago when he contacted me to talk about Act 70, which was passed in the PA legislature, and I just want to read to you what a piece of Act 70. Act 70 ensures that in the state of Pennsylvania we have human rights, Holocaust and genocide education for our students, and very specifically that the Holocaust, genocide, and human rights violation instruction be permitted, and that it shall be age appropriate, sequential in the method of study, communicate the connection between national, ethnic, racial, or religious intolerance, and the subjects described in the subsection. And it goes on to talk about how public educators and school districts are charged with making sure that our students have a deep understanding of genocide, Holocaust, and human rights education. And Mr. Berenbaum immediately joined a committee to, as part of the excellence and equity work that we're doing. And as part of that committee, he was extremely passionate in making sure that we have a robust Holocaust, genocide, and human rights program. And through the work of the committee, which includes specifically a Yom HaShoah planning committee that has been meeting, we've been celebrating Yom HaShoah, which is the day of remembrance for the Jewish Holocaust that happened in Europe in the 1930s and 40s. That has been being celebrated at Upper Dublin High School, but in Sandy Run, there was an opportunity for us to broaden our Holocaust education there. We were able to meet with the 6th grade team. I see proud Principal Clark nodding her head. We were able to meet with the 6th grade team who immediately said, yes, we would love to do something. What can we do? Well, there was already a piece in their curriculum around a novel where they read an excerpt from a novel, but they felt that that novel, while really, really wonderful, just didn't meet the level of rigor they felt their students could sustain. So instead, they suggested that they add to their curriculum the book, The Diary of Anne Frank. And so I spoke to Mr. Berenbaum, and he said, you know what? There are plenty of people in this community who would love to see that happen. So he got together with some community members, and maybe 15 minutes later, no, a few weeks later, he presented us with a check, and we were able to purchase 350 copies of The Diary of Anne Frank. So I will stop talking in just one second, but I do have a gift for Mr. Berenbaum, which is a children's book that I will not read to you, but this this book was given, a copy of this book was given to me by former school board member Deb Mendelson, and I thought it was just very appropriate to the occasion. It describes the wonderment of growing up in a shtetl in Poland, and I'll just read the inscription, which says, Dear Glenn, we did become first name basis. Thank you for taking the opportunity to partner with the School District of Upper Dublin to better understand, so that students better understand the Holocaust. May we never forget. Ava Morrison for the Curriculum Office. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's a very thoughtful gift.
As Ava said, I am a alumni. In 1997, I graduated from Upper Dublin, and I am proud that can give back to the community. I do, like many Upper Dublin family members, came back to Upper Dublin. I have 2 children in the school district, so knowing that the school district is focused on enhancing their curriculum and continuing to evaluate their curriculum and take external perspectives is really encouraging. So I want to thank everyone. And really, this story, I hope that you can think about it. It's not about a person that donated money for Jewish education. It's about history, and it really is someone that's passionate about education and teaching about our history. And similar to Upper Dublin's mission of inspiring growth, I don't think this would happen if we didn't have the passion and the mission here in Upper Dublin. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Birnbaum. The next thing on our agenda is an update on the guidance program. Who's going to be presenting?
Unfortunately, Mrs. Ward, our coordinator of guidance, was delayed and could not be with us this evening, so Principal Bob Schultz will walk us through the presentation.
So Happy New Year to everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to come out and present tonight. A little pinch hitting on my part, but I did get a couple swings before I walked up here. So program studies structural change, and I don't want to read the PowerPoint to you, but there's some differences that you should probably be aware of as you look to navigate it. Am I not close enough? Is that better now? Can you hear me now? So as you go online, as opposed to having a series of links for the various departments, there is going to be a single Google document, which includes page numbers, which sounds like a ridiculous thing to say, but with a table of contents and page numbers, a series of numerous links isn't as necessary. And then there are 2 major sections, the first one being the district and the building procedures, and then the departmental course offerings. You have a handout. If you don't have it, it is at least available to you that contains the district and building procedures. We have comprehensive course descriptions and a timeline that's included on pages 5 through 14. By and large, those are simply updates to what we've had in the past in terms of dates and occurrences. There is a proposal for a new grading scale that I'll walk you through that's on page 11. And there's a proposal for a new GPA scale, which is included on page 12. So the proposal for the grading scale, you can see on the overhead or you can see in your handout. The reason for the proposal is kind of twofold. One is we found a distinct lack of consistency as a student travels from grade 6 through senior year in college. So in 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, you have a plus-minus system. In 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, we don't have a plus-minus system. We have what we call whole letter grades. So it's either just an A, just a B, just a C, et cetera. And then by and large, when students go to college or universities, and 90% of ours do, they hit a system that goes back to plus and minuses. So to best prepare our students for what they're going to encounter and what they are accustomed to, our proposal is to bring consistency to the district and better prepare them for higher education. The numbers that you see and most of the references that I make on the next couple of slides are completely consistent with a study that was done at the middle school a few years ago. A team of teachers, administrators, parents, some of whom are in the room, went through a year-long process where we examined best practice. We made decisions on rounding. We made decisions on grading scales. We made decisions on consistencies across departments. We had discussions on best practice, use of zero, et cetera. And this is what we came up with for numerical calculations. The only difference between what you see right now and what you see at the middle school is that at the high school we are proposing the elimination of an A+. If a student takes a class at an honors level or at an AP level, there is additional credit that can be earned, so we didn't see the need to include additional credit in the base grades. Without spending too much time on rounding, maybe it's self-explanatory based on your elementary school math classes, but if it's 0.49 or lower, you round down to the nearest whole number, and if it's 0.50 or above, you round up to the nearest whole number. The final grade will be calculated using a numerical average. So without spending too much time on this, forever, if you got 3 A's and 2 B's, it didn't matter what their numerical values were. 3 A's outweighed 2 B's, you got an A. If you got 3 B's and 2 A's, you got a B. We are now going to go with straight numerical average, so it'll be the 4 marking periods plus the midterm final average. Add them up, divide by 5, you'll have your final grade using that scale. In terms of weighting, and I think that's at least somewhat legible, but I know you have a handout in front of you. The letter grade, if you take the course at the regular college prep level, an A is a 4.0, an A minus is a 3.7, a B plus is a 3.3, and so on. If you take a course at an honors or an AP level, you get 1 additional point added to your grade in a weighted system. You need to have an A, a B, or a C in order to receive that honors or AP credit. So again, what you see on that chart there kind of supports hopefully what I just described. In terms of the body of the document, and this is where it becomes many, many, many pages as all of the departments have their courses listed. Each section starts with a departmental overview. So here's the social studies department, here's what we stand for, here's what we offer. That is then followed by a visual progression. The math department has had that for years. So if you're taking Algebra 1, what are you taking next year? What are you taking the following year? We now have that progression for all of our subject areas, and the example that is copied and pasted into this slideshow is that of social studies. So you see what will students take in 9th grade, what will they take in 10th grade, and then 11th and 12th, they have a couple of different options. After that visual progression, you will see individual course descriptions. So for every single course listed for a department, there will be a paragraph or 2 that describes what the course will contain and what the student will be expected to do. That is fairly similar to what we've always had, but we brought some consistency to some of the language through the work of our coordinator of guidance and all of our department leaders. There are a couple of relatively small revisions that I want to point out to you. The math course number changes. Not sure how many people in the room besides me would really ever pay attention to that, but Algebra 2, if you take it at the honors level, is no longer course number 291. It's now course 211. So if you take it at the honors level, it's 211. If you take level 2, it's 212. If you take level 3, it's 213. It makes some sense. That honors 211 course used to be our honors course in math analysis. We are now calling our honors math analysis course 221. If you take it at another level, it could be 222 or 223. The department made that suggestion. It does seem to be more consistent, and it does seem to make pretty good sense. There are a couple of course changes in the Allied Arts department. There is an honors guitar course which will be offered this year. That is to be consistent with all of our other music programs where they have an introductory course and then the student can elect to take the next course at an honors level if the student chooses to meet all of the requirements for that particular level. So involvement in, for instance, PMEA and going to different competitions and participating in various events. Robotics is a 5-day-a-week course that has not run for 3 years. As a result of that consistently diminished enrollment, we are proposing to eliminate that course, and the subjects that are covered in that course will now be included in our architecture and engineering class. Business law is, I believe, a 2-day-a-week course that we've run it every year, but the enrollment has dwindled over about the last 5 years. We have many more kids taking classes in the business department, but instead of taking partial credit electives, they're taking full credit electives. And again, the topics taught in business law can be covered in some of those full credit electives like entrepreneurship or accounting. And then the history department's scope and sequence has changed a little bit, and that's going to continue year by year. Their curriculum review has based on the standards has resulted in American history starting now in 8th grade, which changes what year's 9th grade history covers. And off the top of my head, I want to say that's from the Civil War to World War II. In 10th grade, that's contemporary American history with an overview of government, and that will cover from World War II to present day. 11th grade curriculum isn't really changing so much. The title changed to a World in Transition, but it's still a world history course. And then 12th grade will change 2 years from now, but based on those alterations and inclusions of more of a government basis in 10th grade, by the time the students get to 12th grade, they will still get the comprehensive government course, but they will have more curriculum in the area of economics. In terms of course recommendations, this is a continuation of past practice. All students will speak to their teachers. Usually happens right after midterms or at the end of the second quarter at the middle school. They get recommendations from the courses from their current teacher. Students who are currently in the high school will meet with their school guidance counselor, and they will review those course selections and make alterations accordingly, and after conversations with the student and certainly conversations at home. Students who are in grade 8 will participate in a classroom presentation that the school guidance counselor is going to make in each of the classes regarding the course selection process. We as an administrative team also travel to the middle school and go over that course selection process, and then at the Program of Studies night at the end of January, we hit it a third time with usually a very large representation from 8th grade parents. And that's what I have. Are there any additions, Mrs. Morrison?
I do believe that Mrs. Ward was going to discuss the revision of our AEA form, and I'm wondering if you could just give us a brief update on that.
Okay. Our AEA form, the middle school and the high school both have, well, all right, for the unaware, AEA stands for Against Educational Advice. So if you are recommended for a course, if the teacher recommends a certain course and you disagree with that recommendation, you are welcome to take a different course. We document that using this form called an AEA. The middle school and the high school have the same process, but the verbiage in the forms is very different. So Mrs. Ward is currently in the process of editing that form so that it is more similar to, and frankly, a little bit more user-friendly, like the one that they use in the middle school.
Will that form then be posted online so it is available and it's not a matter of students having to visit their guidance counselor and request that form?
That is a conversation we can have. The current practice is that after they meet with the guidance counselor and they look at their schedule, if they want to make a change, they ask the counselor for a form, and it can be given right then and there. I will talk to her to see if that's something we want to make available online as well.
Thank
We
you.
certainly could.
Thank you.
Are there any comments or questions from the committee?
I have a couple questions. One is on the no A+. Can you give us I don't want to open the discussion, but can you just give us a summary of sort of the pros and cons that led to the decision not to do that? And also just a question on terminology, looking at the weighted GPA scale. So now that we are in some areas dropping levels from 3 to 2, I think we're calling them honors and academic, is that right? And so do we need to, does this apply globally, and how do we promote that language?
The verbiage on the document that I copied and pasted, I believe, is directly from the old document where it says college prep, which includes levels 2 and 3. I don't want to try to read your mind, but I tend to agree with the lack of use of that term. Go ahead.
Just as a follow-up, when I looked through the document today, I did see a few places, because the departments weren't always consistent, where they use track 2, track 3 terminology. And I guess, I'm not sure if that was exactly what you were asking, but I mean, I think it would be better to move toward what we're going to use in the future, even if they're, in the cases where there are 3 tracks, but to give them a name. You know, this is the honors class, this is the academic class, this is whatever we call the third.
It's difficult to call.
You know, I would
Yeah.
like to comment. I really have to commend. I'm sorry. I really have to commend Mrs. Ward and Mr. Schultz and the curricular team at the high school. They have been working with a very large document that's been in place for many, many years, and they've made significant changes to that document. But I would have to say it is still a work in progress. And I think that as we move this proposed program of studies and send it out to the community, some of those revisions will still be made, but the writing of course descriptions and is taking an incredible amount of time and work, and we want to get it just right. So we are asking that as we continue to develop it, we get feedback, and we'll continue to address any concerns.
The other question was the A-plus question. I think I alluded to it a little bit earlier. When you have a grading system that is based on a 4-point scale, I think there comes a point of diminishing returns when you can get a significant number of points in addition to that 4.0. I know there are districts out there that if you take something at the honors level, you can get a 5.0. If you take it at the AP level, you can get a 6.0. And colleges look at that, and they base their decisions on admittance accordingly. And that's why we have to produce a school profile every year that includes that information. When we discussed it as a leadership team, and we discussed it at the building level in our IPD meeting, the thought was that if we're going to continue to give a full point of extra value for those students taking honors or taking AP, then an A+ is unnecessary. At a middle school where you can't get that additional credit, we kind of understand it, but at the high school we thought an A should be the bar, and then any additional weight above that should only be if it's at honors or AP.
So is there any concern that for those students not in honors and AP, there's no encouragement to exceed, you know, a 93 or whatever it is?
I don't know if I am, or the school is specifically concerned that students will knowingly kind of mail it in after they get a 93. The fact that, I'll tell you the more driving force, I think, in that, the fact that the final grade is going to be based on a numerical average as opposed to the accumulation of the letter grades, I think is really going to take care of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, thank you. No, I'm good.
Oh,
Somebody's about
Mr.
to tell her that
Birnbaum,
there'll be a time for community
uh,
input, and then.
yeah, we wait till the end for community input.
That's
Yeah, no,
good.
that's fine. Now, can you wait and give your input at community input time, please? Thank you. I have a few other questions. No, I do applaud the changes you're making. One, making it one document. I mean, I've tried to look at it before when it was many documents, and each one you have to download about 20 things to read it, and it was very painful. So, I mean, that is very nice. And I appreciate that you made a lot of changes. So some of the questions are just further refinements. If that's, I mean, I'm not going to. Some of them I'll give in writing later on. But is there a point at which you want to finalize this year's program of study? Do you have a date where it needs to be kind of frozen for this year so students can start making their selections, or are you going to keep?
Student selections occur the last week in January, so that's the first time they have access to it. So our finalization is kind of
Okay.
backed into that.
Okay. One other thing that came to my attention today, I really hadn't thought about it before, was that there is a board policy regarding the grading. It's number 214, and to change the grading, which I applaud. I actually think this is an improvement because we're getting more information and giving people better feedback with more information. But I think we have to go through a process to bring it to the policy committee and then have,
Oh,
do you want to address that?
I do, Dr. Ludwig. Just for everyone's, just a gentle reminder, the policy committee looked at 214 last meeting or the meeting before, and we agreed that because this work was happening at the high school, we would defer any action on that policy. We're using the word deferring rather than tabling on advice of counsel. The bottom line is that policy is right now being held to see where the board decides to go with this change, and then we will go back and we will complete revision of policy 214.
Okay. Is it possible to make a note in the program of studies? Is that the way to handle it until it's approved by the board, or how? What do you think is the best way to handle that?
Well, what we were going to do, but we'll certainly take input, based on the wording that you see in this presentation, we're going to continue with proposed. This is
Oh,
what we're
okay.
proposing to do for next year.
That sounds fine. Oh, one other question I had, just looking at things that were on the website from last year, there was a planning guide for each grade. There was a very shorthand one page, the one that looks like this. It lists at the top all the required courses for that grade, and then it lists in a shorthand form, which is just the name and the number of credits, all the things that anyone in that grade could take. Are you going to include that? I mean, to me, it seemed that was a useful thing to have. I don't know what other people think about that.
I can find out if that is to be included or not. I do believe that Mrs. Ward is working, there are many separate documents, and I believe she's actually working with our tech guru, Mr. Vinogradov, to make sure that we are able to integrate everything. So let me find out. I'm thinking it makes sense to have that, and I
Okay.
believe it's in the folder you referenced when there are many separate documents.
Yes. Oh, it's on the current website when there were separate documents. So,
In Mrs. Ward's absence,
yeah,
I think we'll follow up with that.
okay. So, if I have like detailed things that I would suggest on different pages or ask questions, who should I give those to?
You're welcome to send them to my attention, and I can share them with Mrs. Ward.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
I have one more question. On the slide where you showed the history progression as a chart, it was slide 6. That one, yeah, thanks. This implies, and maybe correctly, I'm not sure, that there is a standard progression through these things and there's no flexibility. Is there flexibility in the order to take these? And will the program encourage or discourage or not really mention that there's flexibility?
There is some flexibility. There's also a couple of electives like microeconomics, macroeconomics. That information is included in the more specified document. These are the general classes and the progression that most students follow. There is some room for wiggle, so to speak, especially when the students go from 10th to 11th grade. That's where you have the AP Euro, you have the AP World. We also have our AP Psychology class that some students can take in addition to satisfy the requirement for 4 social studies elective, 4 social studies
So
credits.
when students are making these decisions, people look at the pictures more than the words, of course. So they'll see this and I'm just wondering, do we encourage them? How do we let them know that you don't actually have to do it this way? Or do we want them to do it this way and we don't really want to encourage
Well,
that?
again, the vast majority do it this way. When
Yeah.
the guidance counselors meet with the students themselves, that's when those conversations tend to happen. And even if the students don't bring them up, the guidance counselor can make the suggestion based on knowledge of the student interest, knowledge of what the student might want to do when he or she goes to the next level.
Okay.
So yes, that is a regular conversation. And I don't want to keep beating this, but this is the base level for progression. Ninth grade, everybody does take it. 10th grade, everybody does take it. But you do get more choices in 11th, and those are detailed in the further course descriptions in the document.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
Are there any questions from other members of the board?
Yes,
Dr. Levinowitz?
I just want to know as the board president what the timeline is, where we're going from here. What, are we approving the course of study? What are you bringing next week for legislative? Is it just what's in the agenda right now?
I'm going to very respectfully turn that question around. In the past, we haven't had the program of studies approved. I think it's pretty good practice to have it approved so that we have the discussion here at the Education Committee meeting, and then if a vote is requested, that could occur at the legislative meeting.
When will we have to approve the course of study? At what meeting?
If we are going to approve the program of studies, then we would have to do it at next week's legislative meeting.
So it sounds like the fundamental question is, do we want to change our past practice and formally approve the program of studies, or do we want to leave this to the administration?
I think it probably is best practice if the board begins to approve the course of studies. And that way we are guaranteed an annual review of where we are. There may be changes, there may not be changes, but I think it's best practice just to ensure that we're all on the same page and that the board is fully informed of what we are doing at the school. So I would suggest that, yes, we move to a practice of board approval.
The other thing I wanted to say is, I strongly support going pluses and minuses. My only concern was what the process was and what kind of feedback the high school administration received before bringing it to this level, in terms of student input, parent input.
I kind of spoke to it a little bit earlier. When we made the changes at the middle school, we had a large committee that included, Happy New Year, Mrs. Ward. When the middle school examined their grading practices, we had a very comprehensive committee that spent a year making those decisions. When it got to the high school, based on a look for consistency, we have discussed it at the administrative level, we've discussed it at the teacher level. We have also looked to see what are districts in the surrounding areas doing. Most have something that includes other than a pure whole letter grade. In terms of the involvement of students and parents, and it's part of the reason that you still see the word proposal here, we thought it prudent to bring it first to the Education Committee before we took it out to the students and the parent groups for input. I would love to have a PTO discussion around this at my next meeting, and I would love to have forums where we bring in students to have their, get a chance for their input as well.
Right, the concern, so we could approve the program of study, but still kind of wait until we get that feedback regarding the pluses and the minuses?
The language in the course of studies is recommended, so
At one point, it's going to change. So at what point does it have to change?
Well, I mean, frankly, by September 1st, but I think speaking of good practice, to give it the due process, so to speak, and to allow students to have a voice and allow parents to have a voice, I would think a firm recommendation by March would be kind of accurate.
So if it comes from back to the policy committee meeting this month and then they bring it to the board in a month, then it will be an open discussion at board meetings also.
Let's chicken or the egg.
Well, is it,
Recommendation first come from the education committee to the policy committee.
I believe that it should. I believe the decision should be
Okay.
made by this committee, the recommendation, and then the policy committee will act according to the will of the board and adapt the policy.
among my co-committee members, does anyone want to voice an opinion about that?
I think that makes good sense for the grading scale and the GPA scale. I'm somewhat concerned that we're being asked to review or to approve the program of studies in a week before. I mean, I haven't had kids at the high school. It's going to take me some time to really go through that and decide if I'm ready to approve the whole thing. So in the past, that's been left, my understanding is, that's been left to the administration, and that, it hasn't gotten my, attention on every word.
So,
So that's a bit of a change for me in terms of, you know, me being ready to actually vote to approve it in a week.
87 pages.
I guess one of my questions in terms of approving it, I mean, it seems if the board approves things at the policy level, that we're not wordsmithing. You know, we're not, by approving it, we are approving the courses that are in it and the outline of basically the procedures. So, I mean, if it's not really finalized in terms of wording or what the drawings look like or the type font or the page breaks, I mean, that's really not something the board should be concerned with. So if we approve it next week, I guess we would approve it without approving, you know, conditional or with the conditional language on the grading, which would be then discussed at a subsequent meeting. And that really what we're approving is the courses. And I think in the past, we've always had to approve the course
That-
changes.
That we have, yeah.
So in essence, I don't think it's that much different. Is that your understanding, Dr. Wheeler?
Yes, and that makes perfect sense. The revision process is lengthy because our education committee process is relatively new, and we've been struggling to get everything that we can on each agenda. My apologies to the board that we did not get this introduced a month earlier, but we did get it to committee, and I think if, again, the major elements of the revision are approved and the document is approved, tentatively knowing that we'll be moving forward with more language in March, I think that makes sense. That way the high school can conduct business as they need to, and the board will have time to review and review again.
So to clarify then, what we're being asked to approve is the list of courses on next Monday, right?
I
Which
believe
is not a
that's
change from past years. We do that every year.
right.
Okay,
We approve changes and deletions.
right.
It's a little bit different in the way we talk about how we're doing it, and I presume if there's something in the front material of the course of studies that really is a practice we don't want to encourage, we could discuss it.
Okay.
The only concern is if we're moving forward in the policy committee, I would prefer trying to get some feedback first from the community and the students before we could do a first reading, I guess, but I really would like to hear from community and the students. I think it's a good idea, but we shouldn't jump too quickly until we get that feedback.
And I don't believe that we're planning to bring 214 for first reading soon. We deferred it until I think we need to get some definite information. So we can defer that right now with no closing date, just to make sure that we are getting all the information. So bringing 214 forward is something we can hold off on.
Bob, did the high school ever, Mr. Schultz, did the high school ever have pluses and minuses? Was it something that we changed? You've been there forever.
And Mr. Berenbaum is significantly younger than I. I frankly, I don't remember, but
Yes.
since I was, do you know how long ago? Because I've been teaching here since '97, and we've had,
Had pluses and minuses before, so.
and we had whole letter grades since '97.
47?
Yes, evidently.
Speaking, speaking for the policy committee, I mean, the education committee, I mean, I think at this point, we would like to recommend that the policy committee move forward with the change to the grading scale. I mean, what we've heard tonight makes me think this is a good change.
Unless we wanted to wait for more input from students and parents and the community.
Before making a recommendation from the education committee?
No, before moving policy 214 forward.
Oh,
So we can have a recommendation from the education committee.
That's
We
all.
can move forward, and we can defer action on 214 until we are settled.
all right. No, that's what I meant.
Make sense?
That's
Okay.
what I meant.
As long as the policy is approved before
Okay, okay.
second reading.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz.
Very welcome, thank you.
The next,
Take a minute just to thank Ms. Ward for coming in. I know it was a long, long day. I don't know if she had anything to add, but you did an okay job.
no, we really do appreciate the efforts that you've made. I know this is a big effort. I know working on the K-12 guidance curriculum, which hopefully we will hear about at some point in the future. And so we thank you for the things that you have been doing since you have been here.
We want to take a 3-minute break.
Okay.
Hey, you earn every penny. Okay. I'm on here, so this one is yours. You're dedicated to my.
No, it's all good.
Some are, ninth grade across the line, some are ninth grade going down.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And when you read a document, it makes it hard for kids to interpret.
Yeah.
Or parents.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of ways to that, but
No, and that's why I was,
it's part of the process.
what you said, I think it's just small editing changes, just email them versus talking
I'm
with
not
them.
going to talk about it.
Yeah, yeah.
I can sit here and read my changes.
I do wonder though, so Mark's question on the A+. So my college, you actually got A+, but it was still weighted at just 4.0. Right?
Yes, oh,
I know, but no, it's not. You just get an A. So at the 97th percentile, it's still giving it an A+.
Congratulations.
3.7, yeah, or 3, yeah.
Have you guys gone out? Have you gone out?
Yep.
Basically, a 9
Oh, wow. Right.
you get 93.
Wow. And the baby?
Yeah.
But see here, and this,
Well, and I was saying, just for the sake of the motivation piece of a student, and it doesn't distinguish them from the NGPA, the cumulative GPA, but the sense of pride, ownership, whatever you want to
Could
say.
have been Apple. Isn't that Gwyneth Paltrow's? That's great.
see, you start with numbers,
Great.
you start with numbers,
It's
then you
interesting.
go to like 4037, and this is
1, 2. Oh, you're in trouble now.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
That'll take care of the Ross
Dr. Ludwig, you might want to regain control of the meeting. Dr. Levinowitz now has a mic.
Are we ready to?
Yes, we are.
Okay, I'm sorry. Could we all reconvene, please? We didn't talk about.
Yeah, Tommy got a problem.
I don't know. I'm going to ask about it.
It's gonna affect all the formatting. Well, first go to present. So first it's just, and what happens when you go to present?
I guess I was premature calling this back.
Well, the next agenda item, is that not Ava's? Can't Phil help Ava?
Oh, thank you.
Next question, John, is just Phil and Luke, or Bob and Luke, why is, so at the middle school, why is the A plus weighted?
Because there's no way to get
There's no honors, no 5-0.
that's his job.
I know, but I'm just thinking in terms of educational practices, they're never gonna learn that again.
A plus is a little bit of an anomaly. I don't know.
Okay, Ava's ready with the next item.
Okay. Sorry for the premature request, but now I'm really asking that we reconvene. Okay, the next item on our agenda is placement guidelines for 6th and 9th grade. Mrs. Morrison.
So specifically, I want to bring to the attention of the school board and the community our work around ensuring the proper recommendation for students, and specifically with our restructuring for next year in 9th grade, it's very important that there is a very robust data set that helps guide teachers' recommendations. We're very fortunate because we've done quite a bit of work over the years to make sure that there is a robust data set that goes into making recommendations between 5th and 6th grade. And I'm just going to briefly let Dr. Kutsula give you a snapshot of that so that we can talk about placement recommendations between 8th and 9th grade.
Good evening. So easier to see than discuss, but I'll just briefly talk about the placement decision and data as students move from 5th grade mathematics to Sandy Run Middle School for mathematics placement. Last year was a great opportunity. We had new Eureka math programming at our elementary schools, Carnegie Mathematics at the middle school. But ultimately, it gave us an opportunity to think about the data we were collecting on student progress as they progressed throughout the school year to help inform those decisions as teachers were making recommendations after consideration of various data and in discussions with families around conference time. In the past, there were 4 buckets of points, if you want to think of it that way, each holding 25%. We looked at the curriculum assessments that would happen each unit throughout the math program. We would look at continental math scores. We would look at the 4th grade PSSA percentile ranking, and teacher recommendation was the 4th consideration, and each of those held equal weight of 25%. As we moved into Eureka, we had some new assessments. We also thought it would be appropriate to enact a pre-algebra readiness screener, which had been in place before. Kids could qualify to take that assessment to see if they qualified for pre-algebra. But the administrative team and teachers discussed it throughout last year and felt it was really important that all kids had the opportunity to participate in that screener. And so we put together a series of points totaling about 450 points that students could gather through module assessments, the continental math scores, PSSA percentile, pre-algebra readiness, and points for teacher recommendation. Without going into great depth about how all that broke out, teachers had an opportunity to review that data in teams in the springtime. They shared some recommendations with families. They got feedback from parents. And we in the curriculum office gathered all of those recommendations for all of the 5th grade students and put them together. And because it was a new process, the first time we were considering all these various data, we sent the list without student names, but with the total points back to the teams and said, does it make sense, right? When you see the big picture now and the recommendations that you made, did it make sense relative to where some other students were? And so there was a give and take that happened over the course of a few weeks in the springtime to help kind of finalize and really give a third and fourth look to the data that all the teachers had considered. So in many cases, teachers made some changes to the recommendations, called families, talked to them. In other cases, they looked at the data and said, no, we still think that given the totality of circumstances for this given child, we're going to stay with the recommendation that we made. So it was a really great opportunity as we move forward. We'll do the same again in February. All students in 5th grade will have a chance to take the pre-algebra readiness screener, and we'll put that into this system for consideration. So it was a great process. I think people were pretty pleased with it for year one, and I think it's the basis for some of the work Ms. Marston's going to share with you now.
I think it's also important to note that both last year and this year, the data that was being used and the placement process was communicated with parents, both through listservs from the individual schools as well as from our curriculum office. And during the December conferences, 5th grade teachers shared the data and the process with parents so that they were very aware of what the protocol is. So when we started to think about how to make placement recommendations for our 9th grade students next year, it was very important that we follow a similar protocol to have a robust data set. In the past, the recommendations were based on final grade in a course, and we realized that a final grade can vary. So even if you have some similar assessments, there may be some slight variations in grades based on individual teachers, and we wanted to make sure that the recommendations were based on common assessments that teachers were given. In December, Dr. Clark, Mr. Mitchner, who is the scheduling principal at the high school, and I met with the 8th grade team. We shared with them the 5th grade data as a protocol to say there are approximately 10 data points. They include common assessments. They include standardized tests, and we would like you to begin to identify common assessments that you're going to use in helping guide your placement recommendations. Additionally, our 9th grade teachers will be going to the middle school with samples of assessments and samples of student work so that the 8th and 9th grade teachers can look very carefully at what the requirements are for either the honors or academic course, specifically in social studies, science, and English. However, the math teachers and the math department at Sandy Run was also very excited about this. I would say, all in all, the teachers are working very diligently to put that into place. The caveat is that this is the first year we are in this process, so the data set won't be as robust yet, but it is going to be growing over time so that when a teacher makes a recommendation, she will be able to have very specific data points to help students and parents guide their decision.
Thank you. Any comments or questions?
I trying to think how to ask this question. So as I understood it from Dr. Gritzula last year, teacher input was weighted, or before last year, teacher input was rated at 25%, and this year was rated at, it was a factor in a larger weighting scheme, but in the end, all of that could be overridden if the teacher thought that the formula didn't work. Is that?
Yeah, theoretically, I guess teacher recommendation is 100%,
Yeah,
right? When you
okay.
take into totality. We wanted to make sure that teachers had voice. In certain systems, they rule out teacher recommendation at all in the combination of points, and you just look at straight scores. Teachers in the past have had an opportunity to look at learning characteristics. In this case, we were thinking about the mathematical standards of practice, right, and perseverance, working with automaticity, et cetera. So, to your point, yeah, teacher recommendation is 100% of it.
And that's the intent going forward. That wasn't just because it was the first year of the system. That was, the intent is, in the end, the teacher can override
Ms.
whatever the
Marston's
formula.
giving me a look, so what I said is concerning, so let me know what I want.
I might be misunderstanding your question, which is more the look to try and understand it better.
All right.
I mean, we
I'll
have.
try again.
Okay.
So is the goal that the teacher input will be a limited component of a formula, and we will go by the formula, and in the end, when we make a recommendation and a parent may disagree with it, is the parent disagreeing with a formula, or in the end, is the parent disagreeing with the teacher?
At the end, the parent is agreeing or disagreeing with the teacher placement, right? Not the formula itself, but the recommendation for a course.
I have to say that we purposely, so of the 450 points, there may be some obvious places perhaps where one recommendation or another could be made. We purposely didn't say, well, if you're at 256, you're in this course, and if you're at 255, you're in that course, because we believe our teachers are professionals and that they should have a voice in where they think students are placed. And in fact, there were students who were placed contrary to that formula, not grossly misplaced and not without discussion with parents and perhaps even with students. So at the end of the day, the teacher does make the recommendation, but it's based on a formula and the human factor of our professional teachers, along with the conversation they have with parents.
What we have done, if I may, is we have created a common data set that will enable our teachers to make those decisions based on data to help them better explain to parents, to administrators, how they came to make that decision. So we are certainly not trying to take something away from our teachers. We're trying to create a better platform for them to be able to make those decisions and justify those decisions if there are questions about them.
Okay, yeah, thanks, that answers the question.
Do parents see the data set or the formula, or is it only used, do the teachers have it if a parent questions what the teacher recommendation is, they can get some further information?
The feedback from the parents and the audience are saying they saw their child's data set. So I think the practice is at the spring conferences that they are seeing the totality of points and the recommendation is made at that meeting.
Which again is what we want to do, is have everyone have voice at the table when these decisions are made.
That's good. Any other comments or questions?
Dr. Grzula, in 5th to 6th grade, it's only math, right? And remind me what the options are for 6th grade math. How many different levels do we have?
So we have two sections in 6th grade, 601 and 602, and some students will take 710, which is a pre-algebra course. We do have other students who move through acceleration and may move into algebra.
Okay, so if they're in 602, where do they end up going into high school?
They'll end up in Algebra 1.
Okay.
The regular academic course in mathematics is 602, and then Math 7 followed by pre-algebra. Algebra 1 is then taken at the high school. Students in 602 will end up in Algebra 1 in 8th grade.
I remember seeing a
I'm sorry, in 601 we'll end in with Algebra 1 in 8th grade.
In 8th grade.
a nice graphic of that progression. Maybe you could share that with the board.
That is also shared when the letter goes out at the parent conferences. All parents see that
Okay.
progression. And there will be, for the 8th grade students, Dr. Clark and I will work on communicating what the new protocol is for placement before course selection is made.
Those have also been presented at multiple PTO meetings and other parent forums.
Would you like to see it?
Yeah.
I mean, would you like that? Could
I
you
can share it with Ms. Evans
Sure.
now, and she can forward it to the
Okay,
board.
great.
Another more difficult question, 8th to 9th grade, for social studies, language arts, and science. Are you identifying the students that will have more trouble in the track 2 so that the additional supports would be assigned to those sections? or are you waiting? How are we going to do that?
There are a number of supports in place for incoming ninth graders. For students who are not proficient in reading, they'll have a 5-day-a-week reading course that's been described previously, where they have support in biology, they have support in social studies, as well as in English. Additionally, students, there will be some consideration given when being very, very careful to there's a word for it, and I may have to ask Mr. Schultz what it is, but a scheduler can be very intentional to make sure that the placements that are made show a variety of students so that you wouldn't get students who are particularly high or particularly low in a class, and I think that work will also happen. But other than that, there will be classes that are co-taught, and that will be in place to support students who have an IEP. But if the student is recommended for an academic course, there will be support through some instructional coaches for academic courses, but I don't think there will be a specific singling out of students.
Right.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is a science update, which, are you going to, oh, Mrs. Small.
All right, let me play with them on this side.
So before, I'd like to introduce Mrs. Small, but before I do, I just wanted to make a general comment. It is our hope to have all of our curricular areas present to the school board and to the community with updates regarding our curriculum. Last year, we put into place a new curriculum review process that is a just-in-time review of curriculum, and Mrs. Small has been working specifically, she's our K-12 science coordinator. Today she's going to talk very specifically about the work she's done at the elementary level.
Thank you. See, I'm used to being in the dark when I present, so.
You can keep us all in the dark.
Yes.
now.
Okay, so again, I'm giving a summary of where we've been over the last 2 years or so with elementary science. The goal overall is stated up there to ensure a guaranteed experience in science education for all Upper Dublin School District students that is aligned with state guidelines through curriculum clarity, stakeholder buy-in, and teacher support. So the first 2 slides here is going to give you a very wordy picture of what we've been doing over the last 2 years, the actual curriculum process that has led us to where we are now. So we began this endeavor about 2 years ago, partnering with instructional experts who have science backgrounds and curriculum development backgrounds, including myself, Lisa Fantini from Robbins Park, and a professor from Arcadia University through a partnership with Arcadia. And we've been creating new curriculum looking at state standards and what we now call the state framework in science education, which I'll explain further in a second. That follows the new PDE assessment process, which I'll also describe in a few minutes. So again, this has been about 2 years in the working. About 2 years ago, I was on a personal sabbatical, and I did my internship with Cheryl Malfi at the time. And at that point in time, I was looking at where we were with our science education in the elementary level and kind of taking a broad picture of all the buildings and all the grade levels, and then comparing it to state documents. The next bullet here is showing you the difficulty in that. There's a letter that I included with the hard copies that is from the state that describes the science framework. The science framework has also been developing over the last 2 years, kind of simultaneously with our work here at Upper Dublin, which is a good news and a bad news, because since they're still getting their act together at the state level, we're kind of constantly reacting to them. The latest framework that was released was November 15th, 2015. So that is causing us a little bit of headaches in making sure we are where the state wants us to be. And I don't see an end of it. I don't think if we wait till 2017, it'll just be clear. I think it's going to constantly be changing. So in that letter, it actually describes the 17 state documents that refer to science standards in the state of Pennsylvania. So this means we have to look at 17 different documents to make sure we're covering what we're supposed to be covering. The framework that was released in November 15th, 2015 was very grade level specific. For the first time, the state came out and said at grade 1, these are the science content that we want to be seeing covered at school districts. And it is a suggestion, it's a curriculum guideline, but it is mimicking something called the Next Generation Science Standards. If you're not familiar, that is a more national, NGSS kind of can be parallel to the PA core curriculum, not really adopting the same thing as all the other states. Pennsylvania had to make their own model of it. So the science framework in Pennsylvania is their adaptation of the Next Generation Science Standards. And in there, there's more specific detail of not just content, but skills that students need to acquire to really develop them to be good scientists. So that has been a challenge to keep up with the 17 documents that the state keeps us looking at. We've been working on curriculum planning and writing. So what we did about 2 years ago, we started to solicit volunteers, and I have to say we've been really successful. We are still sitting at 23 of 24 teachers, meaning we have one teacher from each grade level for each building participating in this. That was important because it's in itself, being part of the curriculum writing process, teachers are learning the science themselves, then they're going back to their buildings, and there's a person in each building in each grade level who can be a contact person to know what was going on when we were writing the curriculum and what are the big goals of the unit. So it's really been a nice process of getting volunteers, and it's been great working with the teachers. We've been purchasing materials. I believe, Bill, you can confirm, last year was through some type of grant, that Ready to Learn grant that purchased the materials for our first unit, and that's going to be an ongoing process, but obviously the upfront cost is going to be the most expensive. Once the units are complete, they'll just be consumables costs after that. We've been uploading everything to Google Drive. I think it's safe to say science is leading the pack as far as the curriculum areas in this respect. Now that everybody is on a Chromebook, all of our curriculum that has been written, that was originally written in Word, we've transferred over to Google Drive, Google Docs, Google Spreadsheets, et cetera, so that they could be shared all virtually. This has been really nice for the special ed department to be able to modify things like assessments for students who need modifications, because everything is virtual now. It's also allowed for real nice sharing, so if a teacher finds something that they want to add to the unit or suggestion, you can do it all virtually, and we can make those changes real easy. We've been going through a variety of professional development, which is really important at this level. What we did find when we did our original review of the process starting 2 years ago is that we were kind of all over the place as far as science at the elementary level, what was being taught, what people were comfortable teaching with their science or lack of science background. So we've been really supporting the teachers through professional development. This has included content tutorials, rollouts. We have actually had days during in-service to have time to actually do some professional development with the rollout of the new unit. Collaboration days, so this year was the first year ever, similar to what math has done in the past. We pulled every grade level teacher to all come together at the barn for half a day to just focus on science, and we got really good feedback from the teachers enjoying that experience and finding it really worthwhile. And then I personally have started a science DS. If you're not familiar with DS, is differentiated supervision. 2/3 of our staff have to participate in differentiated supervision. So I've created a variety of science-related DS opportunities, working with NASA, working with Morris Arboretum, some in-house, giving WeatherBug training for teachers who use a program called WeatherBug in-house. So this has been also providing professional development if teachers want it. Continuation here. As we're creating new units, and I should clarify, we are complete one unit that's in process now, and this will become clearer on the next slide. The second unit, which we're calling Unit 3, because it's at the end of the school year, is in the process and will be finished by February for each grade level. As we created these units, we have common assessments, which is also a first in the school district for elementary science. So every third grader takes the same assessment, and there are 3 common assessments for each unit. There's a performance task assessment, which is getting at the skills that the state is requiring. Then there's a common summative assessment, which is usually at the end of the unit, and then some type of formative assessment that is not necessarily graded, but is common throughout the district. We used a vetting process, so the state actually has a document that allows us to grade our assessments, and it basically looks at the depth of level of knowledge, and then also the amount of multiple choice versus short answer versus critical response, and then you actually grade your assessment. We did this process with a 6th grade textbook assessment that our 6th grade staff had been using, and it failed the assessment vetting process terribly. So it kind of proved to us the point that just buying a program or just using the textbook series assessments were not necessarily the best way to go. And there was some hesitation by the teachers at first, feeling like they weren't sure they were able or capable to make all these assessments on their own, but I think in the end, everybody found that it was better in the end. The whole process we really used here was a backwards design process. The idea of backwards design is that you have your big ideas and goals, then you have some kind of feedback loop for students, that's an assessment, and then you adjust your learning plan or create your learning plans. So as we've been rolling out this science unit, we've had the big ideas, which are the units, and we've been collecting feedback from the teachers. So we are changing our assessments if we feel there's a need to, and then we're adjusting our learning plan. So we're actually mimicking the UBD process. So science assessments are now included on Performance Tracker, which is also a first, similar to the reading assessments that students take that follow them from K to 6th grade. Their science common assessment grades will follow them as well. So a 6th grade teacher can look back and see how a student has performed in science from their K to 5 experience. We changed report cards to now reflect the names of the science units to create more uniformity across the district. So in trimester 1, all of 1st grade is doing X, and it says that on the report card, so that is what everybody is doing. The units will continue to evolve through the teacher feedback loop that I referred to, and you'll see more of in a few seconds, and through the collaboration meetings, which gave teachers a chance to openly share what worked and what didn't work with their grade level partners. Planetarium and Robbins Park curriculum are reacting to this, so we are currently in the process of revising them to make sure they're supporting the elementary science curriculum. And for complete support of this new science curriculum, all stakeholders have been informed, given opportunities for questions and answers in the process. We've done this at all staff presentations, district-wide in-services, elementary principal meetings, IPD, grade level collaboration meetings, PTO meetings, and tonight would be the board meeting. Okay, so a quick timeline. Again, starting in 2013-14, we have our internal study of where our science curriculum is, and we included K to 12 in that, but we're focusing on elementary tonight. 14-15, we introduced the UBD process of writing for our volunteers from the different grade levels, and we began writing what we're calling Unit 1. It rolled out last February, and the summer curriculum writing began writing Unit 3. Again, we're calling it Unit 3 because it's the 3rd trimester. This school year, we're looking for full stakeholder support. We're getting teacher feedback to revise Unit 1. Curriculum writing and rollout for Unit 3 will be happening in February. So we'll have another collaboration day where grade levels come together and they'll be getting their 3rd unit at that point with all of the materials and resources, the Google Doc Drive, a binder of the curriculum as well. And then this summer we'll be revising Unit 3 based on teacher feedback and hopefully completing Unit 2. 2016-17, next school year, we'll hope to begin by rolling out Unit 2, which will be really the 3rd unit, but it's falling in between what we're calling Unit 1 and 3 timeline for most cases. And then we'll have, hopefully by next year, a full elementary science curriculum implemented across the district. We'll continue to collect feedback on Unit 2, especially since it's rolling out next year. There'll be a continual revisiting the PA state documents because, like I said earlier, they're constantly evolving, they're constantly updating, so we're going to have to make sure we're reacting and covering what we need to be covering. We'll be revising curriculum and assessments as needed with teacher feedback and through the collaboration process. So here is what's going on now in 2015-16. I will explain the color codes. I apologize, 5th grade kind of got cut off there. So the green units you see up there were Unit 1. They're the ones that rolled out to the staff last February. For most cases, we put them in the first trimester this year because staff had the opportunity to pilot it last spring. So we started fresh the beginning of the school year with those units. You'll notice in K and 1, we chose to hold off because if you look at the content, kindergarten teachers did not want to start the year with friction and motion and energy. So we agreed that we would hold off for one trimester for K and 1. I will say one thing that did come out of the collaboration process and the curriculum writing process is just that kindergarten teachers have to now teach motion and energy and physics, friction. And there was hesitation, but through the curriculum writing process, I truly believe all of the teachers now feel very comfortable with it because we had to almost teach them it. It was like a mini crash course in elementary physics for them to feel comfortable. And if you see any kindergarten teachers, ask them. I think they really do feel comfortable with it. The yellow units are what we're calling Unit 3. They're the ones that will be rolling out this February, so they'll be brand new for this school year. And the blue units are what was in the past that will change, so don't concentrate too much on the blue unit there. Next school year, this is what it will look like. So again, green refers to new units for next school year. That's our Unit 2. Blue is Unit, I got it backwards. Sorry, green is what rolled out last school year. Blue is what will be new for next school year, and yellow is what's coming out this February. So I think you can pretty much read the 5th grade. Those titles were, in many ways, adopted from the state's documents and some clever discussions with the curriculum office of what would be appropriate titles for the units. So that's what it will look like moving forward. To be completely honest, I'm not sure they'll stay in that order. So once all 3 units are complete for each grade level, we'll have the curriculum writing team sit down and decide, is it really best, say, for grade 2 to start the year with matter? Or is that, maybe not the best topic to start with, and should we switch that with land and water? So that might not be the order, but those will be the 3 units for each of the grade levels. Like I had mentioned earlier, we're really trying to use the backwards design process to develop the curriculum. So we want the feedback loop coming back from teachers. So all teachers were asked to, as they finished their first unit this year, to fill in a feedback form. And I have some of that anecdotal and some pie graphs to share with you. So here are some of the statements from the teachers. I'll just let you read them. You'll see there's some positive and some negative. And the next 2 slides are showing you, they're kind of hard to read. I'll read those numbers to you. Some of the questions that were asked in the feedback form, pacing, for instance, since this is not a purchase program, since we created it in-house, one of the biggest anxieties from the teachers was, how are we going to know how long we should be spending on this? Or this is going to take us way too long. We can't get this all done in one trimester. So we asked for pacing feedback. And for the most part, you can see the biggest amount there, I think it's 66.7%, said they did it in 6 weeks straight every day, splitting the trimester with social studies. So that seems to be the favored approach. I don't think we're going to mandate how it is taught, how often. If a teacher wants to bang it out and just teach science 5 days a week, all day, and be done with the unit, I think that's fine with us. It just has to be taught within that trimester. So we are still soliciting feedback on pacing to make sure it's actually doable within the trimester. Overall, we asked them to rate the unit. So we'll see the biggest response here was the second response in orange, that it's strong but could use some adjustments. And then the bottom question is overall, how do you think your students felt about the unit? And that was, they really liked it a lot and learned a lot. The last slide I have here for you is some numbers I pulled off of Performance Tracker. Now that teachers are putting in the numbers, I can kind of look back and see if our assessments are appropriate and difficulty, if they're too easy, too hard. So this is just one sample of a 5th grade class, and you can see the performance task. A lot of students did really well, scoring a 4. We're using the same as the report card, 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, that is all rubriced and standardized for all the different assessments. And then the summative assessment for this particular unit was successful. Most students got a 3, which is where we want them to be. So that is a summary of where we are. Does anybody have any questions? Comments?
I have one question.
Sure.
I know you want to standardize the summative assessments. Why, or what's the rationale for standardizing the formative assessments?
The formative? Well, the formatives are not graded per se. They can be if a teacher wants a grade book grade. And I should clarify, these are common assessments, but they can have as many other assessments as they want. So if a teacher wants to do an exit ticket every single day, go ahead. We're just trying to make some commonalities across so we can guarantee that same experience for all students across the district. I mean, we just came up with 3 as the number. I don't really know if there was a reason. We thought 1 of each type to be common, and then teachers can do, I know a lot of teachers, especially the older grade levels, do science journals as a formative assessment. That's on top of the assessments that are common.
All right, thanks.
Ava, PSSA science is administered in grades
4 and 8.
4 and 8. Okay, so did you say the state is telling you which units to include for each year?
Yes, now they do. As of November 2015,
Okay.
yes.
So in 4th grade, which is the only year they give the PSSAs in
Yes.
science, they're going to test, what are they testing?
So it's all of science. So here, I've been in close contact with Dave Bauman, who is our PA science rep in Harrisburg. He loves when I call.
I'm sure.
And the answer he gave me as far as what should we be focusing on,
Right.
you know, to prepare kids for the PSSAs is he said from grades K through 4, look at the 4th grade anchors and eligible content document. That's where the PSSA questions can be pulled from. And so it's a document. One of those 17 documents is called a 4th grade anchors and eligible content document.
Okay.
So even in 1st grade, we're looking at 4th grade anchors and eligible content if it's that content area, because that's what could be on the PSSA.
And what time of year is that test?
April.
given? April. Okay.
I think it's also significant to think about students' science experience and that concepts build. There is, in the current, with the current standards, there is not a whole lot of time given to make that progression happen. And so we needed to be sure that we were hitting all of the progressions so that students in our school system do very well on the 4th grade science test. And then they move into middle school, and they're still relying on all of the things, all of the foundational work that was laid in science. And so we're feeling much more confident that that foundational work is present, that it's guaranteed for students in Upper Dublin, and as they move into middle school and progress to 8th grade, there's going to be a much more solid foundation.
Right, so did you say we did much better in 4th grade science?
We always do, but I think that's a
then they could-
statewide, I think that's a statewide
Right, statewide.
that you see. The 4th grade PSSA in science is in very much a reading test. It's how well they can read nonfiction and answer questions. When you get to 8th grade, it's definitely more content-driven,
Right.
where they have to actually know the science. So across the state, you'll see a drop from 4th to 8th grade in science PSSA.
Ms. Small, could you describe just briefly what the content is like for the 8th grade science test, and how that works with 6th and 7th grade science classes?
Right.
So the 8th grade PSSA. So the 8th grade PSSA is over 50% what they call nature of science questions. So they're not specific to physics or specific to a life science. They're more about how students think as a scientist, be able to do things like interpret data, interpret graphs, make analogies. So there's skills. And this is this new document called the PA Science Framework that I keep referring to, has a column of what they call competencies. And that's all those skills that they need to apply on the science PSSA in 8th grade that didn't exist in a state document before. So it's actually a good thing that now we're starting from kindergarten up working on these skills. One of the comments I know from our 3rd grade staff who's using the program called WeatherBug to look at weather data and have kids analyze and make forecast predictions, is that their students don't know how to do it. And I said, I know. We want them to know how to do it before they get to 6th grade when they do it again. So there is a little bit of uncomfortableness going on because we are pushing down these skills to a place we used to leave them till they get to middle school. So, I mean, it's really a progression all the way up now until the 2 tests are taken in 4th and 8th grade.
I would agree to say that it seems as though the backwards design concept is good because the bucket keeps changing according to the standards, which is good. I think in terms of the cost savings that you had mentioned, that are the costs upfront, there's significant just because there's a lot of curriculum writing. From a long-term projection, do we estimate that there's going to be cost savings because we're not having to rebuy curriculum that gets outdated very quickly?
Absolutely, and I think the what Ava had mentioned at the beginning, the curriculum summit renewal process being twice a year is really allowing us to be flexible, but yet to plan ahead. So the kits, can I put the numbers out there? So it was $20,000 for K to 5, which honestly, that's not bad. If you go and buy a FOSS kit, one FOSS kit for one classroom is over $8,000. Multiply that by 16. 16? More than 16. Multiply that by, thank you, 24. And, you're looking at an astronomical number. So us looking at $20,000 up front to create things in-house, we did have to buy things. I mean, for teaching circuits, we need to buy wires and resistors and things like that. But they'll last. There will be some consumables, food in particular, or cotton balls or things, but they're really low cost. So, I agree program-wise, and if we keep the stamina, that's the biggest thing, of the teachers being willing to keep coming back in and editing and making adjustments, it's definitely much more cost-effective than buying programs that you have to rebuy every 5 years, yes.
And there is the sense of embedded professional development that Ms. Small alluded to, that it is to be a generalist in an elementary school teacher and now to be expected to understand the concept of friction. Just by handing a teacher a kit doesn't give that teacher a necessary or deep understanding. And this model helps teachers by design. There's a teacher rep from every grade level, from every building. That doesn't always happen, but for the most part, we can feel confident that we have a kindergarten teacher in a building who is there as a resource, who understands the standards very intimately, who understands why the design work was done. And it does rely on our teachers' instructional practice. So this idea of marrying a content area expert like Ms. Small with the instructional expertise of teachers and then allowing them together to get after the standards can be very, very powerful. And I think that we have a K-5 science program in place that we haven't had in a very, very long time. And I just want to add, with a continual review, that it's not over, we're not done. We're going to keep making sure that we're current and that we're getting feedback from teachers and from students to make sure that the learning is occurring.
Mark.
You mentioned consumables. How much? I hesitate to use the word, but lab work is happening at the elementary level. How much hands-on experimentation?
I think it depends on the content that you're looking at. For instance, 2nd grade, their Matter unit was all hands-on. I saw it in practice. It was wonderful. My daughters happened to be in 2nd grade. I saw it all coming home. I saw it all going on. Matter is very hands-on. Some of the life sciences are a little harder. We're not going to be doing some of the life sciences within the classroom, and that's where things like Robbins Park fit in nicely, where we can make those, connections to adaptations of animals that we're not going to bring in like a bunch of animals into the classroom. So I think it depends on the what content you're referring to, but it's definitely a lot more than in the past. Even if you go back 10 years ago where we had the science kits, I think, like Ms. Morrison said, it was a case of these kits being dropped off in a doorway, and some teachers were opening them, some weren't. Those that were opening weren't sure why they were opening them. So although there was things there, I don't think it had a purpose. And now the things have a purpose. So,
could you also briefly speak to the work you're doing with Ms. Fantini in Robbins Park?
Sure. So actually, I just met with her this morning, and we basically, as the grade level curriculum writers have been meeting and writing the units, they've been identifying places where they felt the learning would be better placed at Robbins Park. So for instance, in 5th grade, they have a whole unit on Earth spheres, and one of those spheres is the geosphere, which is the ground and the dirt. And so they decided, rather than try to teach dirt and soil and things like that within the classroom, that will be their experience in 5th grade at Robbins Park. So they literally handed over standards that were in that particular unit to Robbins Park. So we've been trying to identify the ways to use both Robbins Park and the planetarium in supporting, yet not just doing what they're doing in the classroom, really pulling out the standards that fit best to be done in those two environments.
I just want to say I think the whole thing is fantastic. That I feel like we're taking elementary science a lot more seriously than we have in the past. As a district, as individual teachers within the classroom, as a whole progression and a curriculum system, I think this is a massive step forward. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And I have to honestly say, central admin really is the people who are supporting this. I think if we didn't have that starting there, it doesn't matter how much I or some teachers want this to happen. It really had to be, I don't want to say a mandate, but a feel that this is really where we're headed, and it's not a choice. This is our direction as a district. This is what we're doing, and it's been very positive. So thank you.
I have something else, of course. Technology, with the hopes next year of some additional technology in those lower grades. Are we looking to see what we can take advantage of what's out there?
Do you want me or you? Both. Go ahead. Well, I mean, I'll be honest. So we started this 2 years ago, pre-Phil. So we've had to look back at Unit 1 and say, were there things we could have been doing simulations in 5th grade on the Chromebook? So it is presenting a challenge on the unit we already created because we didn't know this was going to exist when we started. As we move forward with Unit 3 and Unit 2, we are incorporating more labs that kids could simulate online. So it is presenting a challenge to Unit 1 that we're going to have to go back and revise. You might be able to speak to more specifics.
So it's really wonderful. One of the most wonderful parts of my day is when Kim is working with teams of teachers in the curriculum office, and I walk through, and I don't survive the walkthrough, so I get grabbed and peppered with questions. So, and those questions come from teachers who, the first question was, are we going to have more devices next year for my grade? Because, and then the next is the because I found this, and this, or in my work writing curriculum, I see opportunities to support writing and math integration into science, and for me to differentiate my classroom and to get that feedback, but we need access and we need devices. And so that's this robust, healthy conversation. But again, it's that contextual embedded professional development that we can't replicate on an in-service. It's what's happening when teachers are really thinking about their practice with the curriculum and the tools together, and in that synergy, working together, that they discover opportunities. So long-winded answer to, we will see changes, but what I love about this process is its iterative nature. Built into this framework that Ms. Small has developed is this constant, we're not writing curriculum that's going to sit in a binder. We're writing a living document that we're going to revisit regularly as we use it.
I think I would also like to add, it is quite challenging for a teacher to leave her classroom to do this work. When we first began this work, our district hadn't been supporting summer curriculum hours for teachers. And I think as we move forward, we are realizing that a sustained number of days during the summer is the most optimal way to do this. And we've certainly did that last summer, and we'll continue to try and do the bulk of the work so that we're avoiding pulling teachers from their classrooms, which we're very sensitive to. Though I do have to say that the collaboratives that have been happening have also been very powerful, and that's by grade level to get all 4th grade teachers together around the science curriculum. That has happened during the school year 2 times, and I think I would continue to support that work.
If there are no other comments or questions, I just want to say thank you so much for leading this curriculum development. I think The process has been great. I've walked through, I haven't been grabbed the way Phil was, but I've seen people hard at work, and it really looked like an engaging and good process. And thank you for heading it.
Absolutely. And I will extend next to Wednesday and Thursday. Kindergarten and first grade will be there all day. If anyone on the board or anybody would like to see the process, you're always more than welcome. And if anybody would like access to the Google Drives with all the curriculum, we'd be more than happy to share them with you. So,
Okay, thank you. Okay, the last item on our agenda is looking at the board motions that will come up to decide if we want to move these forward for the legislative meeting. I think everybody has gotten a copy of these and hopefully had time to review them. There are 3 student activities. One is a cheerleading competition, one is FBLA State Leadership Conference, and one is the District 11 Band Festival. So rather than read them all, because I assume you've had a chance to look at them, are there any comments or questions about any of the activities?
I have just one. Could we just hear a summary of, and Bob touched on it earlier, but can we hear a summary of what's in the business law course and the electronics and robotics courses that we are planning to delete?
In terms of content?
Yeah.
I would have to access that for you. Are you requesting it that we send you a summary of the course description from the 2014-15 program of studies, 15-16 program of studies?
I suppose I could go look that up, couldn't I?
Or I'd be happy. I would be happy to send it to you.
All right, thank you.
And perhaps also the descriptions of the courses that are going to absorb that content and skill that
Right.
would have been taught through these. Mr. Schultz alluded to that earlier this evening, but that might be helpful as well.
Right, thank you.
I was just asking about the first of the activities, but this is fine if you have questions about or comments on either that. The second motion is course cancellations, additions.
Can I ask I have something on the first question.
Oh, all right.
You didn't ask this side of the room.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Dr. Levinowitz.
I'm hurt. I just want to confirm the FBLA conference. We're only paying for one night, I think, of substitute teachers, but it looked like they're away for 3 days. So if you can just double check that they only need subs for one day.
I will.
Okay. That's it.
April 10th and 11th are a weekend.
It's over a weekend.
Okay.
Okay.
My bad.
So any comments or questions about the second motion, which is any other than we've already had about the course cancellations, additions, and changes? I do have one question. The first statement under there is due to realignment of support and remediation strategies. It's recommended that the board approve the following for 2016-17. It's not clear to me that that's relevant to the changes that are being requested.
I'm sorry, could you repeat your question?
So on the second motion, which is course cancellations, additions, and changes at the high school, the first sentence under the heading that says it's due to realignment of support and remediation strategies, is that relevant to the changes that are being requested?
I'm now recalling that when you wrote to me earlier with this question, I looked at the wrong part of this motion. I'm not sure. I will find out, and we will delete it if appropriate.
I guess the second part of that is, because I looked back last year, there were some changes that supported that. There were the addition of the reading courses and the Keystone courses. Are there any changes in any of those courses, or are they, are they the same as what was offered last year?
In terms of Keystone remediation courses,
Yeah, that and the reading and the co-taught courses, are they, it may be how many people are teaching the course may change, but the courses themselves, those aren't changing?
no, there's no course change.
Okay.
In terms of Keystone remediation, it is with this year's ninth graders that we will have to provide some remediation as appropriate.
Aren't there
As we
other
have in the
level
past.
3 classes that are being deleted? Are there other level 3 classes being deleted that are not listed here?
I believe that when we did the motion to restructure ninth grade in December, we deleted the level 3 classes for
Okay.
social studies, science, and English. And
Okay,
so
so it was
I'm
done
not sure that
already.
we need to do that again.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions?
I would just say that on this recommendation report, we're also adding a recommendation for the policy committee to review that policy on grade point average. And then in addition to that, that the board approve the program studies. Is that going to be coming from the education committee itself?
I guess we do need a motion for approving the program of studies. Will that just be
Is that going to just,
added?
yeah, just, is that going to be coming from, I would think it's coming from our committee. Just
Yes, my office will write the
Okay.
motion to
Thank you.
recommend
Thank you.
program of studies.
Thank you.
The only other motion is to approve the conferences, and we already had a question about that. Are there any others?
Just to clarify my explanation that the 10th and 11th are a weekend was, did not completely answer the question because there's 4 days listed, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, it's 4 days.
We were just reviewing that when Dr. Ludwig asked me the question that I asked her to repeat. So we will get after that and find out what's going on.
I just wanted to make sure that we didn't all
Right.
think that I had figured it
Okay.
out, because I hadn't.
If there are no other questions about that, I think we will move to community input. Is there anyone from the community who would like to make a comment about any of the topics? Please go to the microphone, state your name, what part of the community you're from, and then give your comments, please.
I have 2 comments. I guess one question on the program of studies and the grade point average. It wasn't clear to me what mathematical analysis was conducted to make the assessment this year. Has there been? And how does that impact colleges that evaluate grade point average? And when I went to school, there was a class rank. I guess that doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
But I think there'll be a lot of compression if you don't have an A+. And you have A's, you're going to have more compression. That I like to see a mathematical analysis. Second, I wanted to thank Ms. Small, and I think when I got acknowledged this at the beginning of this evening, I think one of the stories that is there's a ton of resources externally outside of Upper Dublin, and not just money. So I'd like to put a plug in for one of my board affiliations with River Bend Environmental Education Center as a resource to Upper Dublin. And I could talk to you offline about it.
Sorry. Tanya Cologne, Fort Washington. I just wanted to say Happy New Year to everyone. And I wanted to thank Mr. Schultz and I believe Mrs. Ward for the GPA revision proposal, however you want to word it. I know it's been long in place, and a question of concern from students that have expressed interest in wanting this change because of the inconsistency in coming from Sandy Run and coming to the high school and losing the plus and minuses, and then having such a broad range of the grading area. And then kids are very smart, and they figure out the formula, and the way how we have it currently, you are able to basically pass majority of your classes, in essence, when you should be failing them. But if you're on the other end of the spectrum and you're the brighter student, but you might can't get over the little hump because of the way how we have the formula that we currently have now. So I think moving forward, this is something that colleges are using. The plus and minuses are there. And to the other community member who mentioned something about the A+, we definitely need that. But it's a direction and right step. And Mr. Schultz, you are definitely right with the grading committee who came many years ago. I remember that, and I'm glad that we're coming together many years later to definitely move forward and hopefully have better success stories. So thank you.
Anyone else?
Jennifer Revelo, Ambler. I wanted to thank both the presentations for tonight. As a taxpayer and also an educator, I also very much appreciate the board members' thoughtful and I think knowledgeable questions that were asked. I think the idea of getting better in a district that has a lot of wealth going for it, to have a critical eye on what we're doing. I look forward to hearing more about what's happening simultaneously in the middle school and in the high school in terms of looking at things, because I think that these need to be happening simultaneously. While I hear the comment about it being a reading test in 4th grade, I think we need to really think about preparing these kids on an international scale. So I look forward to hearing future meetings. And I say kudos to all the work that you're doing, both volunteering and the after-hours work. So I appreciate that as a taxpayer. Thanks.
Anyone else? If not, thank you to the 3 members who spoke. In terms of the analysis of whether we should include an A+, Mr. Schultz?
I'd like to talk to you afterwards, if I may. I think the question was, have you performed a mathematical analysis, and then specifically around the inclusion of an A+. So the second question, no. The first question, we did perform a mathematical analysis to see if the final grade being calculated with a numerical average would take away any advantages our students have in the determination of their final grade from our current practice. And the answer to that was no, and that's part of the driving force for moving forward with it. Let me see if I can channel my inner Mrs. Ward on this one. So when colleges are, let me back up. Our high school is responsible for putting forth a school profile that goes out to all the colleges. So when a student applies to any college anywhere in the world, the school profile is included. The higher level institution then looks at that profile and sees what is the grading scale. Do you have plus or minus? Is it whole letter grade? Do you give additional credit for an A+? Do you give additional credit for honors? Is an honors a 0.5 or a 1? Is an AP a 1? And they take that into consideration when they look at the grade point average and when they look at the comparison of the students. So my understanding is that that profile is what really drives the decisions at the colleges, and they will adjust to the changes that we're making.
Please correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed to me that most of the other comments were not really questions, and I appreciate the appreciation of our work, the administration of the board, and anything else we need to answer that I missed? Any final comments from anyone on the board? Or
Just
Dr.
an
Wheeler?
announcement that the board will move to executive session after tonight's committee meeting.
I would just like to, since we're commending people tonight, which is a wonderful thing, I would just like to do a little tip of the cardinal hat to our curriculum leadership and coordinators, the work that has been done in organizing our curriculum council, our curriculum review process, and the work that's been done by our teachers in writing curriculum in the last 2 years is quite impressive. And I think it demonstrates a real commitment to improving our educational program. As good as it is, we're getting better and better. And I think that needs to be acknowledged as well.
Thank you, and if there's no other comments, I think we will be adjourned. Thank you all for coming.